From a year ago, Tazria Metzora. I just pulled this out randomly out of my bag, looking for blank piece of paper. It is
This is hilarious. All right.
like that.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. Okay, we're going to begin now.
Oops.
What else?
Apologizing for the chair.
We'll have to table that discussion for later. Um, Tough crowd, I tell you. All right, where were we? Okay, Baruch Hashem. Let's just finish one little technical thing here. Let's do that. Feels good. Feels good. All right. Parsha Metzora, not always learned on its own, usually learned together with Tazria. Tazria taught us the laws of somebody who has tzaraat, which is called a. Somebody who has tzaraat is called a. Incorrect. Everybody thinks that, but that's incorrect. Actually, he's called a tzarua. A mitzor is mit, coming out of being in that state. He's a mitzor is somebody who is about to not be a tzarua. He's that's why this parsha deals with the ceremony, the sacrifice, etc., that the Metzora brings in order to get out of that state of impurity, of that illness, etc. And then the parsha shifts to an unusual thing. We've spoken about this in previous years, and one last kind of tzaraat that somebody can have. We talked about the body having tzaraat in last week's parsha, clothes having tzaraat. This week's parsha, it's the house that can get tzaraat, and it gets tzaraat by getting spots, either red or green. Not mold, the red or green spots, indentations. If you ever forget what color they have to be, it's the same as the Christmas colors. So it's red or green. And so that's how you know you have tzaraat of the house. And there are ways it has to be examined. Eventually, parts of it are taken apart. Eventually, if God forbid the tzaraat isn't leaving, then the whole everybody's leaving the house. And that's the story. And since we're on the subject of tzaraat and the things in the house become impure, then the parsha shifts to other situations where things can become impure. There's all kinds of different impurities due to what's called a zav. Somebody having different liquids coming out of their body. I'm not going to get into details now. In fact, in today's parsha class, we're not even going to get to that chapter. We're going to not skip it, but we've spoken about it in previous years in some detail, and hopefully we'll have quite a bit to say about the first half of the parsha, God willing. Okay, so without any further ado, let's jump right into the let's see. Here we go, into the sources. So first, we're going to look at the very beginning of the parsha. The kohen basically directs traffic as the Metzora brings sacrifices and everything else. And the pasuk tells us in chapter 14, verse 4, that's Yud Daled, V'tzivah HaKohen, the kohen commands, V'lakach l'mitaher, so that the person should bring for his purification states parim chayot tahorot. He brings 2 live pure birds, the eight erez, and cedar wood, ushni, v'tolat, v'izov, red stuff, shni, tolat, v'izov, hyssop as usual, and this is brought for the person to become purified. What's interesting is, as opposed to other kinds of purification processes, and we'll get, like I said, if you look in the parsha, you'll see towards the end of the parsha we have other kinds of purifications that need to be done. What's interesting is that in this particular case, as I said, the kohen directs traffic. The kohen is very involved, and he has to command. It says v'tzivah kohen. The kohen has to command him, and he tells him what to do, and he's watching him. He's like the mishkiach. He's a supervisor. All right, so what's happening? Why does a kohen have to look over this any more than a kohen does for almost any other kind of purification process? So it says Rav Moshe Feinstein in Darash Moshe. He quotes this verse and he says, "Ma shene'amar b'parshat tzaraat Metzora shakohen yira v'yitziva gam et hakiyum," that the kohen has to supervise and watch the whole goings on. Shelo kechol hamitzvot. It's not like any of the other mitzvot. Shene'amar rak hakiyuv shemechayev meila mekayim. So there, in any other situation, the kohen just tells them what to do. The person does it. Oof. And he's purified. Here, the kohen has to, make sure it's being done right, etc. So he says, "Hu l'lamdenu shetzarich l'lamed talmidim." It's just like somebody who's teaching students, derech Hashem, the way of Hashem. Lo dai l'lamed lahem hadin. It's not enough to just teach them what the law is. The halacha is A. The halacha is B. How are you supposed to do it? The students should see how it's done. They should see the teacher needs to be an example of what we're talking about in halacha. You can't just say the halacha is this and then go do something else. The teacher who tells his students, don't forget to make a bracha, don't forget to make a bracha, don't forget to, and then the students see this the teacher, eating without making a blessing, without making a bracha. So that's obviously going to be it's going to lose a little some of the fire. Right? The kids aren't really going to be very inspired like that. I remember hearing a story about a teacher who was taking bribes to help students pass the class. This is not a Jewish school. This is a professor in a university, and he was the head of the ethics department. Head of the ethics department. So he was being brought up in front of the commission to see if he should be fired, and he said, "Why are you firing me? I'm not doing anything wrong. I decided my ethics are that this is okay, and I'm teaching the kids all kinds of different ethics." So they said, you're teaching ethics, teaching what's right and what's wrong. You have to act that way too. It's not just enough that you're a genius and you know your stuff and you're famous and you might have published books or whatever else. An ethics professor needs to have ethics. And the same thing here by mitzvot. Somebody who's teaching students, they need to be able to act a certain way. Ubefrat kishini kishal talmid echad tzarich lishgiach al kol. And so that any one student will be able to look at the teacher and say, that's the way to do things. And if that student makes a mistake, if the student makes does something that they shouldn't do, the teacher, if the teacher's somebody who's respectable, then that teacher can give attention to what's going on. Shirak be'ofen zeh yesh lekavod shiyu hatalmidim yiru Hashem b'alei Torah. So that that's the only real way to make sure that the students grow up to become the kinds of students that they need to be, is if somebody is watching over them. So just like that, so just as we can pretty much, I hope we can all pretty much understand what a teacher should be doing for his students. It's going to be tying in a little bit to the Shabbat Hagadol drasha. Free plug this week. But just like that, similarly, a kohen is watching over these people who are getting out of this state of tzaraat, and is also needs to watch every single step in order for the students to see, oh, this is somebody who cares about me. Oh, this is somebody who behaves the right way. I want to emulate that. Okay, so that's why the kohen is involved, according to Rav Moshe Feinstein. Beautiful. I'm going to skip 4 verses now to chapter 14, verse 8. Still in the first aliyah. The person who is becoming purified needs to launder his clothing and shave off his hair. And he has to bathe in water. v'taher, and then he becomes pure. The achar, and after that, yavo el hamachaneh, then he's able to go back into the camp. Remember that we talked about in last week's parsha, somebody who has tzaraat has to live outside the camp. And v'yashav michutz la'ahalo shivat yamim, but he should still not live in his own house, his own tent, for 7 days, right? So there's still a quarantine. We don't want him to somehow mitame, to somehow impurify his own home. He is able to, though, join back into the congregation. Now, what's interesting is, this isn't the first mention of his having to shave his hair. He also has to shave his hair a week earlier, the first time when he starts the purification process. There's a whole week-long purification process. He shaves his hair, and then he has to stay away from impurity. And then he a week later, if he still doesn't have tzaraat, if the tzaraat is still going away or still went away, then he's able to become pure, and then he cuts his hair again. So there's this second shaving, and it's kind of interesting that it doesn't say in this verse, but in the previous verse, I wish I would have had it here. That would have been nice. In the previous verse, it's okay. I'll just it's okay. I'll just tell you. It says it goes into some detail about this this shaving that he has to do. So Rav Chaim Kanievsky Zecher Tzadok Levacha wants to know in Talmud Dekra why it is that the second time he's shaving his hair, there's a whole lot more detail than the first time. He has to shave both times. So why is the first one? So it seems like perfunctory. We're not going into detail at all. The second time, the Torah is going to tell you, he shaves this, he shaves that, whatever. Goes into some detail. He shaves off all his hair, his head, his beard, his eyebrows. All of that is mentioned in detail in the previous in that verse. In fact, the next verse, right? So, v'hit galach rishona shel Metzora k'tiv v'galach et kol saro v'galach et sheni et kol saro v'et rosho v'et zigno v'et gavo inav v'et kol saro. So a lot more detail is mentioned in this second shaving than in the first shaving. Why is that? Metzora kohanim. It says in the Midrash Lamdu Shagam v'hit galach et rishona kain hu. He does the same thing. There's no difference in the shave. So this actually makes the question stronger. It's the same shaving. It's identical. It shouldn't be any different. And the same details that should have been in the first shaving are mentioned in the second one, but not mentioned in the first. So why is that? So he says, what's Chav Hey? Anyway, so he quotes, huh? No, it's with a yud. Anyway, Kaf Hey, the Mishnah Perak Yud Daled Negaim. He quotes a Mishnah in Negaim. Man de Amar Shebishnehem Migalach Kiledat. So each one is so the Mishnah is also there. That they have the same exact rules. The Al-Kain, you could say the Chule, the Torah Katuv Zeh Gabe Tiglachat Harishona. So it's really the first one. So now he quotes a Gemara, because there's a Gemara in Nazir, page 60b. B'mavor the Galachat Harishona legadel v'shnia la'avir rotzoloma the Rishona migalach kedei sheyuchal legadel achar kach legalachat shnia. The first shaving, says the Gemara, might be identical to the second, but it's only to prepare the body for the second one, because there's an idea, and I don't know how scientifically accurate this is. It's not the place for that, but there's an idea, and I know I definitely know that people say this about shaving and haircuts even nowadays, that when you cut your hair grows faster. So that first shaving, that first process, the week earlier, when the Metzora shaves his head, it's to prepare himself for the second shaving, which means what? Which means, says Rav Chaim, he says, so he says, according to this, Yesh Lomar delakach katva Torah b'shniya shehi ikar. That's the main thing. The second shaving is really what we're all focusing towards. That's why the second one has so much more detail in the Torah. So I like this idea very much. What he's saying is, the Torah doesn't say that the second shaving is the main thing and the first shaving is. The Gemara says that. The Midrash says that. In other words, the Torah Shabbal Peh says this. Is there any evidence of that in the Torah itself? Doesn't seem to be. In the wording, there isn't much evidence to that. But then if you notice, if you pay attention, the way Rav Chaim knew how to pay attention, what you'll notice is that the first shaving is hardly any detail, because it's only there as a perfunctory preparation for the second shaving, which is the main shaving according to the Torah Shabbal Peh. So it all fits together in this beautiful way. Okay, we're going to skip 10 more verses. We're already in the second or third aliyah by now, and still talking about the process of this purification. And I'm pretty sure this is second aliyah. And part of what the kohen does, it says chapter 14, verse 18. By the way, we're all in chapter 14, the whole class today, just so you know. Ubenotar b'shemen asher al kaf kohen, and he sprinkled some of the oil. He put oil on his hand, and then he sprinkled some of it, and now he's got some left. So the rest of what he's got left, Yitin al rosh hamitahir, he puts it on the head of the person becoming purified. And that's how finally the man becomes pure in front of Hashem. Now on this verse, Rav Samson Rafal Hirsch, surprise, it goes into some detail about what exactly we're talking about, and then he tells us what the theme is. So really wanted to focus on the theme, but we should probably start from the beginning. It's a very short piece. He says, this is the order of the chazayot umachanot of the oil. First, the kohen sprinkles of the oil 7 times towards the Kodesh HaKodashim, towards the Holy of Holies. Then the kohen places of the oil on the ear, thumb, and big toe of the person being purified. The kohen then pours the remainder of the oil that is in his palm on the head of the one being purified. The remainder of the log, the remainder of the oil, is consumed by the kohanim. It's literally eaten. So that's the stuff that's not in the kohen's hand, obviously. Through this whole procedure, a profound truth is conveyed to the one to be purified, one who is about to be readmitted to the sphere of the sanctuary. If all of this has symbolic meaning, the thumb and the toe and the earlobe and the hand of the kohen and the oil, all of these things, if they have any kind of symbolic meaning, and they should, says Rav Hirsch in many places, so he puts it all together into this very short paragraph. By the way, he proves all of this in other places. I'm not going to go into great detail now. His physical health depends solely on his spiritual and moral health. That's the lesson. If you want to be healthy, going to the gym is not a bad idea, but more important than going to the gym, more important than having all the various weird new vitamins that give you all kinds of proteins and everything else, the most important thing to do to be healthy is to be morally healthy. That's how you have this amazing, should only continue. We have such amazing Arichat Yamim in so many of our Gedolim. They live such long lives, even in times when historically people lived 40, 50 years tops. We have Gedolim who lived 70, 80, 90 years, It's probably has something to do with the fact that they stayed spiritually and morally healthy. He continues, we must devote to the Torah all the strength that he hopes to receive from God with every fresh, ever renewed energy. He must fully actualize these seven. That's what the seven sprinklings mean. Actualizing something. God's Torah, which rests where? In the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the Holy of Holies. Toward this end, he must devote first the mind, which absorbs ideas, as symbolized by the ear, the deeds, which implement, as symbolized by his thumb, and the aspiration, which seeks possessions and relationships, symbolized by his big toe. In other words, we run to our relationships. We use our hands to do our actions, and we use our head to do our thinking. So all three of these things need to be in the same, going in the same direction. He must devote every thought, every action, every aspiration to the fulfillment of the Torah, so that his devotion takes hold of his entire spirit, at the root and source of all his thoughts, emotions, and actions, as symbolized by his head. Only if he behaves in this manner will he become hallowed in both body and spirit, a dedicated servant of God, and only if he becomes such a priestly individual may he hope to benefit happily from the strength and health he has attained. So in other words, the fact that the priest is there, the kohen is there, is important. The fact that all these body parts are being used, the fact that oil is being used, all of these symbols fit in together for this very important message that to remain healthy, we need to be spiritually healthy. And the way to be spiritually healthy is to devote our lives, our actions, and our thoughts, and everything that we've got to serving Hashem. Now, we're going to skip quite a bit towards almost the end of chapter 14. Chapter 14, verse 34. Yud Lamed Daled. Says there, now we are talking about this last kind of tzaraat that the Torah talks about, which is the tzaraat of the house. It says, Kitavo el Eretz Canaan. This is, I think, in the 5th Aliyah. Kitavo el Eretz, or 6th. Yeah, anyway, sorry. Kitavo el Eretz Canaan. When you go into Eretz Canaan, Asher ani noten lachem, that I will give to you, lachuzah, so it will be your inheritance. Menatati nega tzaraat bebeit Eretz lachuzatchem. I'm going to put tzaraat in the houses of the land where you are dwelling. And of course, famous Rashi here, the Rashi on this verse says, it's kind of, the language is strange. It seems so. It's almost happy. You're going to get the land, and I'm going to give you tzaraat in your houses. Isn't that great? No, like the land. Yeah, can we have a line item veto here? I'll take the land. You Hashem, give tzaraat to somebody else. But atati tzaraat, nega tzaraat, says Rashi, besora hilahem shanagayim bayim alehem. It was there was an announcement that they would get these kinds of negaim, these kinds of plagues on their houses. The shehit minu amorayim mitmoniot al zahav bekirot betehem. What happened was that there were people called Amorites living in the land, and they, on fear that they were going to be attacked by Israel coming in from the Midbar. This is back in the time of Yeshua. They thought that maybe they'd have a very successful war. Eventually, it would be difficult, perhaps, but eventually they'd win, kick out these colonizers, and keep the land for themselves. And meanwhile, they'd be afraid that their wealth would be taken by these people. So to keep that from happening, what did they do? They hid the wealth in the walls of their houses. But then, and the Jews took over those houses, and then the Jews, when they sinned and got this tzaraat of the house, then their walls would have to be broken open, and over there they'd find the gold. So that's the good news. See, good news comes in interesting ways sometimes. Here, so Rashi is quoting the Gemara and the Midrash, etc. So that's the idea. It says Rav Moshe Sternbach, Shlita. He writes, Yud Daled Lamed Daled in Tam V'dat. He quotes this Rashi. Yeah, he quotes this Rashi. that this is good news because they'll find the gold that's been hidden by the Amorites in these walls. And then he says, why are they getting this tzaraat? Ubshuto mash b'dekol ikra shel tzaraat habatim brachaki Yisrael. It seems like this is a be'otador in that generation. This is some sort of blessing for the Jewish people that they got tzaraat. Ach nira umkan shel devarim yisod gadol. But you learn a very important lesson from these words. Shelafi shemitzinu mehatmino amorayim matmoniotehem betoch korot habatim, is that they hid their gold into the houses. Hare shakir am im kol chalalo betochno mashminim heim la'adam yoshev abayit. The point of a house symbolizes human behavior. What is a house? What other creature builds a house like we do? Right? What one of the things that symbolizes society, symbolizes human civilization, is the fact that we live in houses, and that's what is getting attacked by these nagaim, these plagues of tzaraat, if we deserve it. Sorry. Eretz shel achnai b'toch kirat beito ad shelo toil lehem lechitza mibachutz. And these this doesn't they're not able to cure this tzaraat until they take everything out of the house. Notes tam mutzihem el mechutz lamachane v'tzaraat tuma ma'eret hi be'ein la takana el netina v'haris. So the hold on. Right. So this tzaraat, remember, this person got tzaraat for not really recognizing that his house isn't his house. Everything that we own really came from Hashem. It's a gift from Hashem. And if you turn your back on that and then misuse your gift, then you need to learn the lesson that this doesn't belong to you. Just like the gold and whatever jewelry or whatever else the Amorites were hiding in their houses didn't really belong to them, so too our houses don't really belong to us. It's an important lesson to learn, that we become sort of independent in a way, sometimes inappropriately, thinking that what Hashem says doesn't matter. And that is very, very wrong, as we're also going to see in this next verse. Last verse for tonight.
Chapter 14.
Still chapter 14. In fact, this is the last verse of chapter 14. Chapter 14, verse 57, Nun Zayin. The verse tells us that all of these things, all of these different kinds of ways to get rid of tzaraat, lahorod b'yom hatame b'yom hatahor, zo Torah hatzaraat, is to determine to basically to rule, to horod, right? To rule, to make a decision about what is pure and what is impure. The kohen needs to know, and that's how we know what to do with a tzaraat situation. Now, what's weird, says the Oznaim Mater, says Rav Zalman Sorotskin, is the word lahorot. Doesn't really fit in here. And that is because the word lahorot doesn't only mean to rule, it also means to teach. That's where the word mora comes from, lahorot, to teach. Melamed, she'en ha-kohen roe et hanegayim ad shironu rabo. The kohen does not determine if something is the midrash tells us in Torah Kohanim that a kohen does not say whether something is tzaraat or not until his teacher tells him that it's tzaraat. Yesh the devarim she'efshar lilmod otam gam min hasefer. Yesh devarim she'efshar lilmod otam rak mipi rav. Some things you can learn from a book, like how to kosher a house, or how to what's a kosher floss to use for Pesach, or whatever. And some things you can only learn by watching somebody else do it. Just like we were talking about before from Rav Moshe. When you see actual halacha being determined on its own. I remember very clearly. I think I've told the story before. I was in yeshiva, and it was right before Pesach break. So this time of the year, almost exactly. Back in 1996. Only difference is the year. And a friend of mine was driving me to one of the Jewish bookstores in Muncie. He was going to get some books to bring home. And his car was not the best, and he had to pull over. And he pulled over right next to my Rebbe's house, Rabbi Kokas. Should live and be well. And we knocked on the door, wanted to use the phone. This is before cell phones. So I wanted to use the phone to get the car fixed, whatever. We knocked on his door. His wife opened the door, and behind her, we saw Rabbi Kokas on the floor with his book open, and he's wiping the book clean of chametz. So there's one thing to read that in a halacha book. It says, if you plan on using a book during Pesach and you think it might have chametz in it, so you clean out the book. It's another thing to see your Rebbe on the floor cleaning out his book. All right, it's a whole different ballgame. It becomes much more real. So that's the lesson here. That's why here the word to say to determine somebody's tzaraat status is to learn, is to teach. The kohen learns from somebody before he makes this decision, says the midrash, because there has to be somebody there, because you'll always learn better by being surrounded by people who can inspire you and who can teach you. The lesson, it's not just a lesson for Pesach, it's a lesson throughout the year that we need people around us. We need to make sure we're surrounded by wise, great people. The more the better. And we should learn from them, not just by the words they teach, but also by their actions. Thank you very much, and hope you have a good rest of your week. I'm going to stop the live feed to Facebook, and if you have any questions, now would be a good time to ask. If you are not here to ask the question, by all means, feel free to comment on the Facebook and YouTube channel. Thank you.